Imagine a fisherman, he's called Alex, standing by the edge of a river. He casts his line into the water with a serene confidence. In fact, he regularly wins the catch of the month at his local fishing club. And every time someone asks him about his seemingly good luck, he smiles and confidently states that it's all about having the right mindset. Well, one day, a young fishing enthusiast asked this wonderful fisherman to define this right mindset exactly. Well, he replies, it's about, how you approach things, patience and connection with nature. Well, the young enthusiast is interested to know more. Is this a fishing specific mindset? Is this the growth mindset or the abundance mindset? The fisherman feels a bit rushed about this and is like, it's all of them maybe? And the enthusiast is not that excited by the answer, and he wants to know more. What's the specific learning framework of this right mindset? Is it about the passive conditional learning style, or the incremental horizontal learning, or even transformative vertical learning? At this point, the fisherman realizes he doesn't really know what the concept of just the right mindset means. It's just something that he's repeated quite often. And this tale of the fisherman is our entry into the complex world of mindset. It's a concept that is often misunderstood and regularly misused. Much like our fishy friend Alex, we can use it as our favorite fluffy answer to a set of much more specific things that we don't quite understand. So hello and welcome to the show with me, Sam Webster, where we will be learning all about what mindset actually is, some of the most common mindsets, some of the mistakes that we make when we think about them, and how speaking about them more specifically can in turn become much more useful for ourselves when we think about the outcomes we want to achieve. So stay tuned whilst we dig into some of the nitty-gritty essentials about mindset that people never actually talk about. So what is a mindset? At its core, mindset refers to the established set of attitudes held by someone. It shapes how we perceive the world and respond to challenges. Carol Dweck is the pioneering psychologist here who popularized the concept of mindset through her research on the fixed and growth mindsets. She highlighted how the nature of our beliefs about our abilities can significantly impact our success and development. Specifically, that if we believe that we can improve through hard work and dedication and honest feedback in our practice, then we can get better at it. When it comes to cognitive psychology, a mindset is the cognitive process activated during a task. Now, cognitive processes can refer to learning, attention, perception, and memory, so it is a bit of an overarching statement to make. But the point of referring to a specific mindset is then which parts of those brain are active and what are they doing, whereas mindset in general is kind of everything, which is why mindset is so appealing, because it does kind of have all the answers to everything. But if you talk about mindset as a whole, no one should ever actually know what you're talking about, because you could be talking about anything. If we're talking about cognitive processes, it's also interesting to just look at cognitive biases, because they're very similar to mindsets. A cognitive bias shapes how we interpret the world around us and make decisions. And a mindset is essentially a larger group of biased sentiments around a specific behavior that we have, and that mindset has an effect on how we interpret events that are happening and how we make decisions. So growth mindset, as we've spoken about it, is all about how we think about learning. A fixed mindset comes from thinking that we are innately just bad at something or really good at it and that we don't even need to practice to improve, or that we're just as good as we can get and perhaps not even realizing that there is another avenue to improve at it. So, for example, everybody learns to talk, but as an adult, you might not think about expanding your working lexicon to add 5 times more words into your general vocabulary that you use day to day, or maybe how to frame your sentences to get the point across better or tell better stories so people listen to you. You're like, yeah, I can talk and I can tell people what I think. And that would be fixed mindset thinking compared to being like, hey, if I put lots of work into how I talk, I could have an incredible aura of gravitation towards me whenever I speak. Anyway, in recent years, the term mindset itself has morphed, as many words do over time in culture and with behaviors around language. Mindset has morphed into a more catch-all buzzword for just motivation and attitude. And it loses its depth and nuance when people don't actually talk about the specific mindset they're referring to and just use it kind of colloquially about anything. It's become a staple in wellness blogs, motivational talks, and self-help books, and often gets stripped of its original rigor and complexity. Ultimately, it's not really something you can fight. Buzzwords are like fashion trends. They appear, suddenly become wildly popular, and then fade into being overused and diluted by misinterpretation. The term genius was exclusively used for the most elite minds on the planet. Einstein was a genius. Newton was a genius. Darwin was a genius. Now, the term genius can be for anyone mildly above average intelligence. Your kid who did well on a school test is not a genius. The dude at work that knows all the keyboard shortcuts is not a genius. Baking a delicious tray of brownies does not make you a genius. But these days it's kind of how it's used, and it did have a specific and quite cool meaning, but then society wanted to use it for other things, and it was a nice term of respect to use for kind of anyone. And that's how language works and changes over time. And now in the modern day that we have podcasts, things can happen even faster. Terms like narcissism are vastly overused. It was exclusively for calling someone a narcissist with narcissistic personality disorder, which is a very rare and incredibly nuanced disorder that not many people have. But people will spot narcissism everywhere, and they'll often think they're engaging with narcissists when they really aren't. In fact, a fun fact here is there are a lot more clinical psychopaths in society than there are clinical narcissists. But the term psychopath is something that we associate with serial killers. So that word's never got diluted. In fact, it's done the opposite, in that actually 99% of psychopaths aren't serial killers. They just have an extreme lack of empathy. So if you are calling someone a narcissist, you're actually more likely to be talking to a psychopath than a narcissist. And yet we don't talk about it. And that is one of the curious sides of language. Anyway, the point is that words can start with a very solid grounding in psychology and then often get diluted in the mainstream. Mindset is no exception. And it does currently have a massive overuse by wellness gurus, mindset bros, and pseudoscientists alike. And the general zeitgeist around mindset is both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it does bring psychological concepts more into the public consciousness. On the other, it does risk massive oversimplification and misconceptions and superficial applications. Learning about a specific mindset is about learning what to think and how to think in a given environment or during a specific behavior. Whereas if you think about learning psychology, that is studying how thinking works itself. And I have found myself increasingly more interested in talking about psychology and explaining how thinking works rather than talking about mindset and saying how to think. And I expect that part of the reason I've done that is that there are just so many mindset bros and wellness gurus out there who feel they can go around telling people what to think, and yet they don't even understand how thinking works. And I feel it's kind of more important to understand that first. The amount of content out there that talks about mindset in general or specific mindsets, but in a way that isn't helpful, is kind of annoying. Like if I hear the average podcast daring to lecture me about the abundance mindset, I'm like, kill me now. But it's actually a really fascinating topic viewed through the lens of psychology, and because it's all about fear and how we perceive the concept of opportunity and make the most of our situation. It's a really important mindset, but if people want to talk about abundance, it sounds kind of lame. But the average person that talks about abundance is kind of lame and not worth listening to. So I thought we could clean up a few mindset definitions for fun and some common misuses, just as an excuse to dig in a bit further. So let's start with finishing where we left off with the fixed and growth mindset, as this is the growth mindset podcast anyway, and it's the favorite and best mindset of all of them. Not that I have any reason to say that, and Carol Dweck certainly doesn't pay me for this podcast. But anyway, as we've covered, Carol Dweck taught us that a fixed mindset is the belief that ability is static, whereas growth mindset is the belief that ability can be developed through effort. And this dichotomy has a really profound implication for education, business, personal development, And we can adopt a general growth mindset just across our life, but actually it also applies very specifically for each individual different behavior, where we might have more of a growth mindset for that, but not for others. And it is an area that is endlessly fascinating, because you can have a growth mindset towards all of your different biases. You can have a growth mindset towards your process of learning. You can have a growth mindset towards your relationships, etc. And besides just the general culture of overall growth mindset, it's something you can work on continuously and curiously for the whole of your life across all of the things that you do. Hence, it's worth having a whole podcast on the subject of growth mindset. But a common myth related to growth mindset is that it is simply believing in growth leads to success. Kind of like manifesting. As if the possibility of just believing hard enough could make you an elite runner or a millionaire, and you can just manifest your dreams. In reality, of course, a growth mindset involves recognizing challenges and difficulty, learning from criticism and embracing criticism, and persisting despite numerous setbacks and things not going your way. And it certainly isn't just about positive thinking. If you consider Thomas Edison's journey with the light bulb, he had repeated failures through 10,000 different experiments before he got to making a light bulb that worked, but he wasn't deterred and he viewed them as learning opportunities. That is the essence of a growth mindset. Viewing failure as a pathway to innovation and improvement, not being like, I can invent the light bulb, and expecting it to work on the first time and being like, well, it'll happen sometime. Like, no, you just have to carry on doing it for another 9,999 times. It's not easy, but it works. Yet, these days, sometimes when you say the words growth mindset to some people, they honestly think that you are going to be like a wellness guru who'll just start telling them to manifest the life that they want of their dreams, and they can live abundant joy with inner harmony and peace and invent whatever they want. And there's one lady who runs a podcast who reckons that she's manifested herself a house, she manifested the gender of her babies, and she manifested her job through positive thinking and mindset. And you're like, why do these people exist? That's not what happened. You can't manifest the gender of your baby. How are people even allowed to say this? This is ridiculous. But anyway, bad science apart, let's just say that the concept of mindset and some of the lesser interpretations of mindset and growth mindset have become a bit of a blocker for me. But before I complain, let's just move on to the closed versus open mindset, because I'm, of course, open to new ideas. If you have an open mindset, that is someone that embraces new ideas and experiences, whilst a closed mindset resists change and new perspectives. And this distinction, I think, is really crucial in today's rapidly evolving world and where language evolves rapidly. Of course, people can make mistakes with the term open mindset. Many equate an open mindset and being open-minded with being indiscriminately accepting of all ideas. And they might even feel that you should accept anything new, and if you don't like what that new thing is, then you are just closed-minded. But true openness actually involves critical thinking. It means evaluating new ideas rationally, open to the idea that it could be useful, but also willing to shut it out if it isn't. And then when useful ideas do come along, you're at least available to integrate them meaningfully into your worldview if they make sense. But open-mindedness and closed-mindedness has become kind of politicized, where people can be a bit binary about things, and either you must be radically accepting of everything and it's kind of more of the woke end of stuff, or you're a closed-minded racist bigot who isn't open to any kind of new ideas. And it's kind of unhealthy and totally not at all true. The reality of an open mindset is that it has a very practical side. In business, an open mindset fosters innovation and adaptability. Teams that encourage diverse viewpoints and constructive debates are often more successful and resilient. That's why it's, of course, very important to have some diversity in the workplace and between teams that make decisions. But if you go too far for the sake of forcing as much diversity and as much freedom as possible, then you can kind of lose the point of what the business even does, which isn't helpful. You may have heard of Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency company with a mission to help the world use more crypto and open financial borders to anyone. They had a bit of an issue with a reasonable portion of the workforce disrupting a lot of normal work, saying that Coinbase needed to be very heavily involved in Black Lives Matter, which you may feel is a very worthy cause, or you may not. that's not the point of the podcast. The point is that Black Lives Matter had nothing to do with Coinbase's mission of making cryptocurrency more accessible. And at the time, many businesses were suffering from trying to do everything to be politically correct, even if it had nothing to do with the company's mission. And it could come across like you're closed-minded and you're a bigot for not accepting all these new different ideas. But the Coinbase CEO was like, yo, we build applications for cryptocurrency. Now, racism and equality are incredibly important things, but like, I'm sad to say, this is not at all what the company's about. Hopefully, by making cryptocurrency more accessible and removing international borders when it comes to moving your finances can help people and increase equality, but the company isn't actually about racism or equality. So I'm sad to say that's just not what we do. And we can't have political movements going on in the office. Sorry. You are paid very well here. Please do your actual job, and in your spare time, do whatever you like. You have spare time, so use it. And if that's okay with you, perfect. And if that's not okay with you, then you can't stay at the company and we'll give you a nice severance package. And a few people left and a few people changed their behaviours and everybody else just got on with work. They focused on being a single company with a single mission. And doing that helped them stay effective and resilient and open to ideas about crypto that were useful and didn't have them bending over backwards to try and be everything for everyone. As they say, if you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. Of course, you have to have an open mindset for improvement and change, but you shouldn't be open for the sake of being open. And it's the same for me on the podcast. I happily experiment with different formats. I'm open-minded to the best experience I can create for you, the listener. I'm open-minded to topics that I could approach and how I can dissect them. But I also believe that psychology is for everyone. So I deliberately don't try to ever push my own political opinion, because this podcast isn't a place for opinions. I actually don't like telling people how to think, it's about psychology and learning and embracing curiosity. And I'm trying to just help people be more rational thinkers. And with those tools, they can then make their own decisions. It's not about telling you what decisions to make in life when it comes to different things, which again is another point around being a podcast about mindset, which is actually telling people how to think versus a podcast about psychology, which is about telling people how thinking works. But anyway, let's move on to the scarcity and abundance mindset, which, as I've said, is really cool. And I promise I won't hit you with manifesting your life dreams. Now, the scarcity mindset is about a focus on limitations. It's a distinct fear of losses and often engaging in competition over a lack of resources that you believe will run out. It's a general feeling that there is a single pie and it's a fight over your slice before it's gone. Whilst an abundance mindset, however, emphasizes opportunities and seeking new wins. There is another bus coming in 10 minutes, so why panic about this one? And this mindset means that you can think collaboratively and you can grow the pie together for everyone because things are abundant instead of scarce. And the dichotomy between these mindsets and how you engage with resources and opportunities really influences our financial decisions, our relationships, and our overall well-being. And it's a really, really incredibly important mindset. But the misconception, of course, about the abundance mindset is that if you adopt it, it will magically solve all your problems, when in truth, the abundance mindset won't make you rich just because you believe there's like another $1 million business opportunity tomorrow. You still have to do some work to pursue it. Just because the bus comes in 10 minutes, you still have to get on it. With an abundance mindset, you still need strategic thinking. The benefit about abundance mindset is it can help the types of strategic thinking when you realize that you can be more aware of opportunities around you and you can recognize potential. And it's certainly not about ignoring challenges. Otherwise, then you're never going to get anything done. And I do find the whole scarcity mindset really fascinating in that psychologically, there's a huge difference in your behavior when you believe resources are scarce. So if you don't have enough money in the bank for the end of the month, it's hard to think much beyond things like food. You can hardly invest time in long-term decisions. It's a very immediate short-term focus. There's a lot more stress involved. Your entire framework of thinking is filled with stress, and it's not a good place to be. Whereas if you do have enough money in the bank and in general you believe there's plenty to go around and life feels abundant for you, then it's much easier to be more generous and less anxious, and that fosters better personal and professional relationships. You're more likely to spot opportunities rather than be blinded by focusing on all the problems and limitations around you. So it's really cool. And there are like 30 other mindset pairs that are actually all fascinating, and it would be a bit excessive for me to talk about them right now, but I am very tempted to do an episode that covers all of them, or maybe break them up into theme sections, because it's probably about time that I do that. Anyway, how do we use the term mindset correctly then? Instead of using it to vaguely refer to general attitude, try to think more specifically about the environment in which the mindset is being used and the behavior it is about. Is this about learning, and so growth mindset, or is it about how you embrace ideas, the open and closed mindset? Or is it about your perception of resources and opportunities, thus the abundance mindset? And in all of these cases, you can dig further into the specific mindset, the lens towards the behavior, and how that environment triggers the different mindset for you. And putting the effort into thinking a bit more deeply about this is where the benefit actually comes from. Just like we've spoken about recently, when you have lazy thinking and something feels a bit harder to do, that's often where the value is. And it's very easy to do lazy thinking and just talk about kind of mindset, but you're never going to get any value from just talking about mindset if you can't be specific about it. It's exactly the same thing when we talk about biases. Saying that there is some biased thinking going on doesn't solve any problems at all. You need to be specific. Is there an attribution error going on, like the self-serving bias? Or are you experiencing cognitive dissonance, or is it the recency bias? Because if you just diagnose someone else or yourself or a business as having biased behaviors, it's just like saying you're a human. All humans have biased behaviors, and it's completely useless without the specificity. And it's exactly the same with mindset. If you can use it accurately, it really unlocks an understanding of the psychological roots of what you're talking about and helps you apply the relevant thinking towards it by giving it the proper context. So for yourself, just try to avoid vague or overly simplistic uses of the word mindset, because when you do, you aren't really saying anything at all, and you could just use the word attitude. So really try to challenge yourself to instead specify the type of mindset and its implications. So to be very clear here, an inaccurate way of using mindset would be to say, you just need the right mindset to do better. But instead, an accurate way would be saying, if you adopt a growth mindset, that will let you see these failures as opportunities for learning. And that is how you will do better. And so I think it's pretty clear that digging into some of the complexity of mindset is really going to help you harness its true power. So yes, I have convinced myself that I probably need to cover the full 30 most common types of mindsets, because they're actually quite fascinating, and it's going to be fun. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that. And on the subject of my content plans, what am I going to do with the Growth Mindset podcast when the term mindset has become more diluted by the general zeitgeist? Well, I certainly hope that this episode hasn't come across as whiny or like I'm overly annoyed, because I love people and I love the way that language changes over time. I love how culture evolves. It's fascinating, and I love psychology and just watching stuff happen in real time. When I started the podcast 8 years ago, the term mindset generally meant something different in society. And that's fine. I wouldn't be embracing the reality of psychology if I was complaining about it. That would be dumb. In fact, it would be a very victim mindset for me to blame society for my problems, when of course I could have an open mindset to new ideas, take responsibility for how I want the podcast to come across, and that's what I'm going to do. I am currently having a good old debate with myself about changing the framing of the show from mindset, as I've mentioned, which is about what to think, how to think, to being more focused on psychology, which is about how thinking works, so you can decide how to think for yourself. And to be honest, that's what I've been doing for like the last 2 years, if you actually look at the content I've been doing. So if I change the actual title of the show, it's still going to be about ideas from psychology and maybe some philosophy, and the content will certainly be motivating whilst exploring the fun, curious sides of psychology, mental models, biases, mindsets, mastery, learning and how it works, cognition, relationships, the nervous system, personality, all the cool stuff. And the same stuff that I already talk about anyway, just perhaps with a slightly different title. And even though I'm saying this, it's not going to happen straight away because I'm toying with some different ideas that I thought it'd be worth you knowing if you have any inputs for me. Like, should I go into psychology for deep thinkers or psychology for entrepreneurs even? I am wondering about perhaps just aligning the title of my show with the title of my newsletter and calling it Expansive Thinking. And I have all the options. And I'm not in a crazy rush, but I'm just aware that I should probably start working on this and change things. And I'm really happy with testing some stuff for a while and getting some feedback because that's how you make good decisions. So if you, the listener, do have any ideas for yourself based on what I've been talking about, please feel free to drop me a comment in what interests you and how you'd like, and what would be a framing that would make you go, that's cool. And you can email me at growthmindsetpodcast@gmail.com. You can put a comment in Spotify or YouTube, or there should be a poll on Spotify. And on the subject of giving me feedback, I also have my Wednesday afternoons free at the moment for any listener, new listeners, old listeners, to book a call with me. If you don't currently have a problem in your life and you just want to say hi, that's totally cool. We could chat about books, psychological thrillers, or how to hitchhike across Kazakhstan. Or if you do have a problem or you want to access some of my business experience or psychology or investing knowledge, then that's also really cool. Or we can have a mindset coaching session. That's actually fine. I'm honestly just fascinated to meet more of my listeners and learn more about what makes you tick, because it's actually a really huge help for me as a podcaster, because podcasting is a bit of a silo. Everyone listens completely anonymously. And I had like 65,000 different people listening last month, which is epic, but I'd have no idea who any of them were besides the 3 people that I've had a call with this week. And when you want to make content, it is really helpful to visualize who is on the other end listening to it. Like you, this person right now that's listening, like I honestly don't know who you are. And it would be nice for me if I did. So if you are thinking about booking a call with me, please don't worry about taking up my time. You're actually doing me a favor. A lot of people clicked the link last week and only 10% of them actually booked a call. So overcome the fear, stick a time in my diary. I won't bite. And big thanks to the people that already have had a call with me. Shout out to Jamiro, Lila, and Rustam. You guys are legends. Moving on, remember that by moving beyond buzzwords, we can delve into the real psychological insights that are available to us by putting in that extra thinking. And next time you hear a friend or colleague mention the right mindset, do punch them in the face. I mean, do send them this episode. That would be lovely. Sharing is caring. It's how the podcast grows and how we share knowledge. And so, yes, sharing the episode is definitely what you do when you hear people saying things like right mindset or being fluffy about it all. I've got your back there. There's no need to punch anybody. And on that, life is too short for punching people or having a scarcity mindset. So when things do go wrong in life, which they always inevitably do, remember there is another bus coming along, and sometimes it's the universe making way for new, better things in your life. Don't forget to be kind to yourself. Do climb a tree this summer and smile at strangers.